Let's move to the local level with Councilman Lander from New York. Thank you.
Good morning. All right, you're a little better than you were when you got started. My name's Brad Lander. I'm a member of the New York City Council, and I'm really humbled to be here with some real heroes in the room. I'll be very honest, I'm honored to be here to talk about the School Diversity Accountability Act that we've just passed in the spring in New York City, but I really feel a bit like an imposter that I don't really deserve to be here, and I think it's useful to unpack that a little for part of what we're working on. I've got a long history of working on social and racial and economic justice issues, 2 decades of working on affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, fair housing issues, a lot of work on economic justice, minimum wage, living wage, working with the car wash workers in New York and the fight for 15. More recently, a lot of work on police reform. We passed a couple of years ago in New York City a bill creating an NYPD Inspector General and strengthening our ban on bias-based profiling, and quite a lot of work on public education because it's the biggest thing we spend money on in New York City and the most important thing by far to all of my constituents. I do not have a meaningful track record fighting school segregation and working for diverse schools. And I think it's worth just asking the question why the fight against segregation and for integration is insufficiently large and loud and valued in our fight for equity, and that's been a flaw in my work on it, and it's a flaw in the de Blasio administration's work on it, and it's a flaw in the Obama administration's work on it, and we just need to own that. Not as a mea culpa. I think there's some work we have to do unpacking why it's hard, why there's resistance to it, and what the steps are. So I'm going to go to the communication breakout session and talk about how people are using stories to call attention to it. And I guess I'll say just a minute about what woke me up. One, obviously, is the data, the Gary Orfield study that came out in 2014 showing that New York schools are the most highly segregated schools in the country. Impossible not to be bowled over by if this is a set of issues that you care about. And the numbers really just mirror exactly the numbers that you show in Maryland, although our numbers, are even worse. So the average student of color in New York goes to a school that's 70% kids that are low income, average white student 29%. I won't go through all the other data, but the concentration of apartheid schools, 6% of the schools in the New York City metro area are diverse, and it's getting worse. In 1970, the typical African-American student went to a school that was 29% white, 1980, 23%, 2010, 17%. So pretty bad and getting worse. The good news for me is that what woke me up equally, because I think we could get overwhelmed by the problem, is some fantastic grassroots activism on the ground in our schools and districts, fighting hard to make change. And some of those people are here. So you're going to meet some young people from Integrate NYC from me. You're going to meet some young people from Park Slope Collegiate in my district. Let's give them all a hand for being here. Go to their session. Go to their session as well. And then some great activism. Adults can be engaged in it as well. So New York Appleseed is doing some remarkable work in partnership with school leadership in PTAs and community education councils around New York City. Unfortunately, that work has really been struggling to get traction, even in, and I'm such a strong supporter of our mayor and our schools chancellor in New York. I'm proud to be longtime friends with both of them. Great work expanding universal pre-K, really good work diminishing the impacts of high-stakes testing, focusing on struggling schools. Nothing yet on moving toward more diverse schools. And in fact, the set of schools and districts that have been reaching out to ask for support in strengthening those policies have mostly so far not been able to get, they've got an ear, but they don't have any progress. So luckily, what we were able to do in the council is join with those set of activists. And what we passed this past spring, is the School Diversity Accountability Act. And you can look it up on my website, bradlander.nyc/school diversity. It's got 2 parts. First, just a resolution. The state took away any power the city council has over education. There's essentially mayoral control with state oversight, but two parts. First, a resolution saying we want to see the Department of Education change its policies officially so that diversity is a goal in school decision-making for admissions, for zoning, for all, for resource allocation. Not everything, I love that quote that Rucker Johnson gave from Albert Einstein, that not everything that counts can be counted. But the second part of our act requires that the Department of Education start counting and measuring diversity every single year in pretty detailed ways. So every year now, and the first report's due December 31st, the New York City Department of Education is going to give us a very comprehensive report at the citywide, at the district, at the school, and even at the program level. So we get at that issue of if there's a gifted and talented program, really get down in there with all the demographics, race, ethnicity, English language learners, free and reduced lunch, kids who are living in temporary housing, take all of that and where there are test scores, disaggregate it and look at test scores as well, and in every case speak to the admissions policy that that school has. A challenge we have in New York City is, of course, our elementary schools are largely segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated, and we have the kind of neighborhood zoning that gives you segregated schools. But even in our middle and high schools, where we don't have that, we largely use essentially tracking or achievement-oriented admissions policies to resegregate our middle and high schools as well. So first, you do need to measure it. So every year we're going to look and we're going to see year over year, are we getting worse or are we getting better? And every year the Department of Education has to say, what are we doing about it? And tell us the strategies and policies that are being used, where they're being used, and we'll be able to look and see, are the policies in those districts and in those schools helping us get better or continuing to get worse? And what we really believe is that that will provide a platform for the activist work on the ground. And here's where I do want to give a little bit of good news, because we've got some models that we believe are working, and if we can grow them, and if we can measure them, and if we can show they're working, then I believe we can expand them significantly. So 2 years ago, for the first time, with the support of New York Appleseed, when a little school in my district, PS 133, for crowding reasons, not for anything else, got knocked down and tripled in size. New school got built. There was 300 seats, now 900 seats. The leadership of education activists in 2 districts said, let's blow up that little zone, give it a real big zone that encompasses very diverse Brooklyn communities, reserve 1/3 of the seats for kids who are English language learners or eligible for free and reduced lunch, and make the whole thing available by lottery across those 2 districts. PS 133, you could go there today. The building is beautiful, and the kids inside are diverse, and the results are good so far. Just this 2 weeks ago, we opened a new school at sort of the other end of my district, where we used zoning just creatively. They were about to site a new school next to an existing school and draw 2 small zones, each more segregated than the previous one had been. As a result of public pressure, they agreed to draw a big zone around both schools. The kids will go to pre-K to 2 in one school, grades 3 to 5 in the other, and the entire area will maintain its diversity. There are 2 districts, really 3 districts, but 2 districts where the Community Education Council, the official leadership body, District 1 on the Lower East Side and District 13 in Fort Greene, have voted that they want to move to district-wide systems of controlled choice, and I see Michael Alves in the room, and they've actually won 2 of those state grants and are now starting, so let's hear it for that. And it's pretty big and bold for them to propose to go to models of controlled choice in places. One of those 2 districts has had locally zoned elementary schools for a long time. We are pushing for more what we call in New York City education option high schools, which are intentionally diverse by achievement, which is another intriguing way to achieve diversity. Those schools look to have basically 1/3 low achievers, 1/3 medium achievers, and 1/3 high achievers in high schools, and they have been proven to be very effective. And then there are a set of people in the room, in addition, who have long been working on changes to what are called our specialized high schools in New York City, Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, which are embarrassing in the levels of students of color, African Americans and Latinos that they have, and there's a lawsuit there, and some concrete policies to change that using the Texas model and looking at other strategies. I hope we'll have more time to talk about because I know we won't now, each of those strategies, it's so hard just to fight the admissions battle, but of course we can't stop there. The resources those schools need, the leadership those schools need, the anti-racist practices that those schools need to succeed. And sometimes, last year I had to fight for a month to get, that school I mentioned that was little now takes kids from 2 districts. But the policy is you can only get a bus from the one district the school's located in. So just to get a bus for the 2nd district took a whole campaign by the PTA of that school. So I don't want to underestimate that. We've got to fight for admissions policies, and then we've got to fight for the leadership and the support and the practices that make those schools succeed. Next thing to watch in New York City is that report is due December 31st, 2015 from the New York City Department of Education, and it is either going to embrace the strategies that I talked about and say by next year we'll be showing you where we're going to get better, because there are many schools asking for those policies and a couple districts asking for those policies, and the New York City Department of Education has not said yes. So watch with us December 31st, 2015. Thank you.